Chapter 14. Ethan had barely kicked off his shoes when his father appeared in the hallway, looking flustered. Did you take him to school with you? Ethan nodded. He needed a break, so you thought you'd sneak him out without telling me? He was really pale, Dad. I lost an entire day's work. There must have been stuff you could do on your own. He shouldn't have said that, especially the last part, because his father's face flushed with anger. Ethan, this is my work, and I need to get it done. Ethan felt something break free inside him. But it's not even your work. You've got someone doing it all for you. And you don't even care if it kills him. His father started to say something, then checked himself and took a breath. Obviously, I'd rather be doing the work entirely on my own, but I can't right now, all right? I'm still having a lot of trouble. Dad slumped a little, and Ethan felt some of his own anger leave him. He helped me finish my project at school, he told his dad, but I did the last few pictures on my own. His dad smiled, was weary but genuine. That's great, I'm proud of you. Ethan shrugged. Why? Mostly I cheated. Sounds like you tried to make it right without letting your friends down. For a moment, neither of them said anything. I do care about Inkling, Dad said, and I'll try not to lean on him so heavily. How is he now? Ethan unzipped his backpack. Inkling? He put his hand inside and waited for the cool gust against his skin. It didn't come. Inkling? He opened his backpack all the way, pulled out Danny the Champion of the World, and flipped through the last few chapters. Maybe Inkling fell asleep. The pages still had words on them, which meant Inkling hadn't read them yet, but there was no sign of him. In alarm, Ethan dumped everything onto the floor, textbooks and binders and crumpled handouts and ancient tests and sticky food wrappers. He started sifting through all, but he couldn't see Inkling on any of it. You didn't keep him in a jar or anything? Dad asked. No, you said he wouldn't run off. Would Inkling do that, just run away? Even more terrible thought occurred to Ethan. Could he have died? He asked Dad urgently, how could he die? What if he just ran out of ink altogether? It was sort of like blood to him. Maybe we worked him to death. I'll drive you back to school, Dad said. That's the last place you saw him, right? Maybe he wandered off. You said he did that once before, right? Ethan nodded gratefully. The art room, yeah, let's go. The school hallways were deserted except for a solitary janitor who pushed a long pink broom, sweeping up the day's worth of crushed juice boxes, plastic spoons, and lone sneakers. Some of the classroom doors were still open, including one of Ethan's homeroom, and he ran inside. Inkling! He checked in his desk, the bookshelves. How would we find him? His father asked, looking around bewildered. Just look for any movement, like shadows. What if he was too pale and dried up by now, Ethan? Ethan thought miserably. Would he even show up? He couldn't see any sign of him. No erased book covers or wall posters. Surely Inkling wouldn't have been able to resist them. Was he too weak to even eat? In the library, he and his dad walked up and down the aisles. But if Inkling was nestled inside the pages of the book, we'd never spot him, especially if he wanted to stay hidden. Maybe he was sick and tired of Ethan and his whole family. Maybe he wanted to be left alone. Back in the hallway, Ethan asked the janitor if he could unlock the art room, but the janitor said he couldn't unless they had the principal's permission. Ethan cupped his hands and peered through the window, watching for any sign of motion. We've got to go pick up Sarah, Dad said. Ethan was quiet all the way home. It was a miserable evening. Sarah kept calling out for her puppy Lucy and didn't understand why she wouldn't come and play. Ethan told her that she was gone for just a bit. He hoped he wasn't lying. As his jar was finally lifted out of the darkness, Inkling looked all around. Where was Ethan? This was not his room. Peering through the glass at him was Vidka. Behind her stood a man he'd never seen before. You greedy idiot, Inkling told himself. This is all your fault. After Ethan had put him back inside the backpack, he'd been gazing contently at the book, enjoying ink, and especially the story. And then he'd felt himself being lowered to the floor. The top of the backpack opened just a little bit and a piece of paper slipped inside. He could practically taste the red ink. He left the book and slid onto the colorful piece of paper. So much red. The more he ate, the more he wanted. He swept higher and higher up the paper until he was outside the backpack. Suddenly, there was another narrow strip of newspaper before him on the floor, luring him with the comic book covers. Like a dark flame, Inkling had crackled across it, and then suddenly knocked against something so hard and slippery. Glass startled. He pulled back and hit more glass behind him. He spread across in all directions, but every part of him hit more and of the same. Feeling himself tipped and lifted, he realized he was inside a jar with a piece of comic book paper, and that had lured him. The top of the jar was screwed tight. Then he'd been dropped into a backpack in darkness until this moment. Look, Vitka said to the man behind her. Inkling stayed still on the paper. During the afternoon, he'd nervously eaten all the ink, so the crumpled page was completely blank except for him. Dad, right here, Vitka said, pointing at Inkling in great excitement. Her father squinted. It's ink spilled on paper. It's not normal ink, she said. I saw this stuff at Ethan's house. This stuff can draw anything. Vitka, come on. This is not a joke. This is a joke, right? Inkling stayed frozen. He could hear the impatience with Mr. Worthington's voice. No, I saw it. Ethan's been using this thing to draw his project at school. It's like intelligent ink, and I watched Mr. Rylance using it in his studio. He showed you this? When? Well, no, I was watching through the window. You were spying on him? Inkling was glad to hear her father getting angry. Dad, just listen. The stuff draws and paints in color, and it's amazing. It was making a new comic book for him. For a second, her father seemed to forget his anger. So he's working on something? Yeah, but he's not doing it himself. This thing does the work. Look, I'll show you. Vitka moved her face close to the glass. Draw something, Inkling. How did she know his name? He stayed motionless in the paper. He didn't like Vitka, and he especially didn't like being kidnapped. He needed to get back home. He needed the help from Peter Rylance, and not just within his graphic novel. Inkling hadn't had the chance to tell Ethan about what he'd found in the studio closet. He needed to get home and lead them to it. I know you can understand me, Vitka said. Draw an octopus like whatever you like. Why on earth would he draw for them? Vitka's eyes narrowed in anger, and she shook the jar. Inkling held tight to every pore on the paper, but he was afraid he might have shifted a bit. Dad, you see that? Vitka said. He's in a different position. Inkling froze. Looks the same to me, Mr. Worthington said. Dad, this thing could draw you an entire comic book in a day. Anything you wanted. Those Extremenex things that you're talking about, you said your company needed a hit. This could do it. Inkling saw Mr. Worthington's face soften. He touched his daughter's head tenderly. Honey, you don't have to worry about any of this. The company's going to be fine. That's not what you said to Mom a few nights ago. He smiled tiredly. We're fine, all right. Now look, where did you even get this? Ethan's backpack, she muttered. He brought it to school. I think he's been playing a trick on you, Vitka, but that doesn't make it okay to sneak around their house or steal. Monday morning, I want you to give this back, okay? Inkling waited for her to say yes, but she didn't. Look, Soren said, let's just go through the steps one more time. I've already told you everything, Ethan said. It was Saturday morning, and they were sitting on the floor of Ethan's bedroom eating cookies right out of the package. The cookies were all mashed into tiny bits because Sarah had been the one to pick them off the supermarket shelf and hurl them into the cart. In movies, Soren said, whenever people retrace their steps, they usually find vital clues or, well, get horribly mangled and eaten. Okay, fine, Ethan said. And once again, I told his friend everything that he had done yesterday since finishing the drawing with Inkling. Your backpack, said Soren, nodding at it. You're sure you checked every pocket? I dumped everything out, yeah. He pointed to the pile on the floor. Have you touched it since? No. Excellent. So the crime scene is, we can say, uncontaminated. Crime scene. Soren held out his hand for the empty backpack. May I? Ethan was impressed by Soren's sudden calm command. Soren unzipped every single pocket. Now the inside of your backpack is black, and Inkling is also black, so he could easily blend in. Soren took out the small pen light. He always carried one in case in case there was a power outage and he was trapped alone in a threatening environment, like a sewer or an abandoned factory. Carefully, he inspected every inch of the backpack. Okay, I agree. It looks clean, he said. Now let's examine the contents. He shifted his attention to the pile of stuff. It was a big pile. Ethan was not organized. Things tended to stay in his backpack for a long time. When he needed to find something, he just dumped everything out till he found it, then crammed everything right back in. Methodically, Soren sifted through the mess. A Twinkie wrapper with an expiration date of, he squinted at the wrapper, 9 months ago. He crumpled a crumpled piece of paper, which is a math test from last month. You got 6 out of 10, by the way. This is a waste of time. Another crumpled piece of paper, which is nothing. Ethan squinted. Hang on. This wasn't regular lined paper. It was newsprint. He looked closer. A blank piece of newsprint about comic book size, ripped out carefully, and there, along the sides, on a few traces of red. Inkling ate this, Ethan said. There was a lot of red, and he gobbled it. But I never put this in my backpack. I don't give him comics anymore. So what you're saying, Soren began, is someone else put it in there? To lure him out, Ethan exclaimed. To steal him! He looked at his friend and they nodded meaningfully at each other. It's got to be her, said Ethan. Heather Lee, Soren said. What? Come on, she's always looking at you. She's a crazy super fan. What are you talking about? Heather's nice. In movies, it's always the nice people, Soren pointed out. You think they're nice and then they turn out to be supervillains or aliens cloaked in human flesh or... Soren, Ethan said. It's Vidka, all right? Vidka. It seems too obvious, said Soren, sounding a little disappointed. But yeah, I think you're right. Ethan couldn't believe he hadn't suspected Vidka sooner. Inkling wouldn't just run away. He'd been kidnapped. She saw Inkling in her bedroom that night, and she's been suspicious ever since. I'm going over there right now. Wait, said Soren. If you confront her, she'll just deny it. And she'd get angry, Ethan thought, and when she got angry, she kicked. He was pretty sure she had a few more black belts by now. We need another plan, said Ethan. Soren nodded. I think I've got just the thing.